want me to leave this? Do you want me to just turn it off for now? Or
Whatever you're comfortable with, I just want to make sure when you talk,
oh, it's 7 o'clock.
yeah, you talk into it.
Yeah, okay, but
I'll stay out whole as you get started.
all right, so I guess we'll get started. Somehow, let's see, I've got, Maxine ordered me to use the microphone, so I have to talk into the mic, but I also have my clicker, so I don't know which, I don't have any free hands here, so we'll see how this works out. So I'm Andrew Hoffman. If I haven't met you yet, I am the new Deputy Regional Security Advisor to the Federation here in Western Mass and also to the Federation in the Berkshires. So I cover everything from Longmeadow, Springfield here, up to, there's actually a synagogue up in North Adams on the Vermont border, and everywhere in between. This is actually going to be a busy week because all the camps are starting this week, so I actually, don't take his binder. There it goes. So I cover everything from here up until North Adams, and then I said this week is the big week with the camp. So I'll be up at Ramah this week. I'll be up at Crane Lake and Kimama this week. So it's kind of a busy week with the camps. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate everyone coming out. It's been a lot of anxiety the last couple weeks with the attacks. I wish I didn't have to be here. I wish I didn't have to be doing this. But the Federation thought this program was important. They brought this program in. And I'll tell you a little bit about myself and a little bit about the program as we go along. So the training tonight is called BeAware. It's situational awareness training. I would rather just talk, but it's situational awareness training. This is training being given to the Jewish community throughout the country. Whether you're here in Springfield, whether you're in Los Angeles, wherever you are, all synagogues are getting trained the same way. If there's an emergency in one synagogue, or if you're traveling, you're going to a bar mitzvah out of town, everyone around you should have had the same training. This training has a counterpart training called Countering Active Threat. Tonight, we're going to talk a lot about what's called situational awareness. This is like the less intense version of the Countering Active Threat training. It's more like a PG movie. It's more like a PG-13 movie, so think of it that way. But you'll hear three big terms tonight. You're going to hear situational awareness. You're going to hear a little bit less, but you're going to hear it quite often, is the term commitment to action. And the final term you'll hear tonight, which you'll hear a little bit less, is called run, hide, fight. Now, when we do the active threat training, and we actually talked about doing that tonight with this training, but I thought it'd be a little too much for everybody. It'd probably take about 3 hours. I just thought it was too much. The active threat training, you'll hear, that training is all about run, hide, fight, and what to do in an active threat. This is about getting yourself mentally ready prior to any kind of incident. The reason why this training is important is When they interviewed the survivors of Tree of Life in Pittsburgh after the shooting there, to a man, to a person, the survivors all said the same thing. We didn't believe it was gunshots. We thought a coat rack had fallen. That was there was a marble staircase at Tree of Life, and they had thought a coat rack had fallen on the marble staircase. It took them a few minutes to realize that's gunfire. And once they realized it, then they got into action. They actually had the training. They knew what to do. But what we're trying to teach everybody is kind of to speed up that process. There's a disbelief of reality. When there's a bad event, when there's gunfire, there's a disbelief of reality. It can't be gunfire. You know, you look at the person sitting next to you. What was that? You know, it's like you don't believe the behavior. You don't believe what's actually happening. So part of this reason why we do this training first is to get everyone mentally aware, situationally aware, and to speed up that process. Because the sooner you recognize the danger, the sooner you can commit to action, the sooner you can increase your chances of surviving, whether you run, hide, or fight. So that's why we start with the situational awareness. Yep. This is a PowerPoint. PowerPoint. Yep. I would love to be able to, but SCN doesn't allow me to send it out. You can take pictures. Feel free to take pictures of the slide. Just a few slides you probably want to take pictures of. They like people to kind of show up to the trainings, which is why they don't really send it out. But feel free if you want to take pictures of it, ask questions. But I just can't forward it out. So, but thanks. I have to walk here, or else it won't reach. There we go. So, like I said, I work for Secure Community Network. We're the national organization based out of Chicago. And the Federation here, in collaboration with the Federation up in the Berkshires, thought it was important to have this security program. They brought in SCN, and I am now the security advisor working with the federations. So, and just so everyone knows, just some of the things I do and the security program does for the community. We do these trainings, whether it's the situational awareness, the active threat, stop the bleed. We have a de-escalation training. Like I said, we have camp training specific for the camps, which I'll be doing this week. We actually have a campus training specific for the Hillels and the Chabads on campus, so I'll be doing that in the fall. So we have a wide variety of trainings meant specifically for the Jewish community. We do a lot of security assessments. I know Rich wants to kill me because I just gave him a 160-page document that I'm making him read. But I've done since February, about 10 security assessments, which is a lot considering they average about 120 pages each. They're very comprehensive, and they're meant to give facilities a roadmap to how to, from low cost to high cost measures, put in place to help secure your buildings. I appreciate that. It's a lot of effort, so I'm glad you said that. So especially lately, and we'll talk about this tonight, the last 2 attacks on the Jewish community took place outside of synagogues, at events. So the threat's not only just internal here, and again, it's not about living in fear, it's about being aware, being situationally aware. But we do a lot of event planning. We just had one up in the Berkshires where their registration list got hijacked a little bit, and we had to kind of work through that. But, we took the steps, and we worked with the police. Wasn't a big deal. SCN maintains an entire intelligence apparatus in Chicago. We call our duty desk. It's a state-of-the-art. I've been to a lot of intel centers. This one's a state-of-the-art one. A lot of really good Israeli-made software there. Really monitoring the web, looking for threats. Since the last 2 attacks, I think they've monitored about 6,000 online threats, social media posts, different things that have come out in support of the attackers. So they're constantly monitoring these things, and we're tied in directly with the Commonwealth Fusion Center up in Framingham, and that's kind of the lead intel center for the state, so we're kind of tied into this whole intel community. I think it's, there it goes. Can you hear me? I know, it's just, so I will say, we talk a lot. The whole purpose of this program, it's the safety, security, resiliency of the community. And I always like to say, the safety and security do not matter without the resiliency. If you can't celebrate being Jewish, if you can't have these events, or have these special events, there's no point in having a security program. So I always look at the most important thing we do is the resiliency component. So that's me. I'm Andrew Hoffman. October 18th, 2024, I retired from 26 years as a special agent with the Drug Enforcement Administration. Then I started this job October 21st. I gave myself the weekend off. I got to play cops and robbers in New York City for about 10 years with DEA, which was pretty fun. Got to run around all 5 boroughs. And then I did 5 years overseas in the Caribbean. Got to play a pirate in the Caribbean. I was actually lived on the island of Curacao for 5 years, which if anybody's familiar with Curacao, it's home to the oldest active Jewish community in the Western Hemisphere, so it's an interesting place. And then the last 12 years, I finished up my career in lovely Bridgeport, Connecticut. And I'd like to say about situational awareness. I spent 26 years living in an elevated situational awareness occupation. It's kind of why they say cops die young, because you're always at that elevated level. Once you're there, it's really hard to turn it down. And I will say this, everyone in this room has the ability to be situationally aware, to maintain their awareness levels. It's not exclusive to law enforcement. And it's kind of funny, I just spent some time with a buddy of mine who did 25 years in the Army. He was actually retired as a colonel, served in Afghanistan, served in Iraq. And I'm like, Bob, you are the least situationally aware person I've ever met. He can't focus. He's a doctor. He's actually a doctor, colonel in the Army, and he cannot focus. I'm like, I'm not driving a car with you. So it's not exclusive to the military. All right, we always take a moment to look for our exits. This is about being situationally aware, is knowing where your exits are. Just whether you go into synagogue, you go into a restaurant, wherever you go onto the airplane, and flight attendant is doing it, you should know where your exits are, which we've got our 2 main ones here, and I know Bethel's got 2 exits in the front here, so. All right, the goal today, situational awareness. Understanding situational awareness and learn techniques to increase safety in all aspects of your life. So our objectives by the end of this training, we're going to define what situational awareness is, explain why it's important. We're going to name the 5 components of awareness, explain the 5 levels of awareness, and define the 4 actions in the decision-making process, which we call the OODA loop. You'll be able to evaluate situations for threats and take actions to mitigate negative outcomes, and commit, and here's these terms again, commit to action each day with intentional situational awareness. The sooner you're aware, the sooner you can commit to action. And we'll kind of keep repeating that. I will say this, a lot of this training, I can envision the next iteration of this training including a whole section on virtual awareness. Because everything we're going to talk about tonight is the physical space. But when we looked at the last 2 attacks, there was a huge virtual awareness component to those last 2 attacks. So we don't name them the shooters, but the attacker in Washington actually registered for that event. And no one ever vetted that. That's a situational awareness thing. There's no point in, every event now you pre-register. Well, there's no point in having a pre-registration if you're not going to check the list and vet the list. It's part of being aware. In Colorado, that group maintained an active social media presence. we try to limit our social media presence. And actually, there is that same group, there's one up here in Western Mass that walk every Sunday for the hostages. They're doing a great job. They're actually have no social media presence. They have a very closed group. They're doing a really good job in maintaining their awareness. Actually, the police know they're out there every week. They're doing a great job. So I can see this training changing, or at least evolving, from just the physical space to the virtual space, because there's an awareness level that we now have to have in the virtual space. SCN likes to put these trigger warnings in their videos. There's a few car crashes you'll see, things like that. It's more like a PG movie, so they put it in there, but it's nothing too intense. I gotta get closer. All right, so they give me this long definition of situational awareness. It's a kind of, as Rich said, it's a cure for insomnia. It's perception of environmental elements and events with respect to time or space, the comprehension of their meaning, and the projection of their future status. But what that really means, well, it's pay attention. This is the pay attention training. Again, if I can get you to speed up that process, to make you a little more aware and recognize the dangers when they're happening, the sooner you can commit to action. I'm aware of what's going on around me, and I'm determining if it is normal for the situation I'm in. I'm forming options and taking action to reduce the risk to me and my loved ones. We're in a sanctuary. People are familiar with each other here. People are dressed very similar. It's a very normal baseline. And what we're looking for, what we're thinking about is what's not normal. Someone walked in here and they weren't dressed like everybody else, or you weren't familiar with them. We're getting people to recognize, it might not be a danger, but it's just to recognize. But a word on bias. How we view the world is influenced by our experience, perceptions, cultures, belief, race, gender, mental status. Good situational awareness is focused on environment, behavior, and activity, not appearance or stereotypes. And I'm going to play you a video to explain what I mean. This is from the Israeli TV show Fauda. So what we just saw there, I don't know, anybody ever seen the show? So what you just saw there was Israeli border guards at an Israeli border crossing. You saw the guards checking on an overtly Muslim woman, and they're waving through the gentleman with the backpack and the yarmulke. Turns out the gentleman with the backpack and the yarmulke is actually the bad guy. And the Muslim woman is just random Muslim woman. And the guy you saw in the car in the beginning is also a bad guy. Who should the guards have been checking? Everyone. Everyone equally. So that's what we talk about. And none of this is easy. Situational awareness is difficult. And I actually just came up last week for me. I go to this little gym in the morning by my house. It's one of those little 24/7 key card places. And then the staff comes in later in the morning. And then I noticed a gentleman walk in last week. And the only reason I noticed him was because it's the same people it's the same old folks every day, shooting the crap, talking, working out. And guy walks in, never seen him before, and he was dressed a little wasn't dressed for a workout. He had flip-flops on, dressed kind of like a little bit of a bum. He was Indian, and I didn't really notice it until he went right to the bathroom. There's like individual bathrooms in there, and he hung out in the bathroom for about a half hour, and then he left. And I'm like, is it me or is it, that's kind of weird. But I did tell, I'm like, I told the woman at the gym, like, she's like, no, because he's done it a couple times. But he's a member. He actually just joined. He's paying. So, it's one of those, I kind of felt bad about it, but it's like, that's not normal behavior for a gym either. It's like you walk in, you use the bathroom, walk right back, walk and use the bathroom for about 30 minutes and then walk back out. Wasn't normal, but I also noticed no one else noticed him but me. So, I don't know. I don't know what we just lost here. There we go. So don't judge a book by its cover. Knowledge and training helps filter bias and temporary reactions to appearance or stereotypes. So why is it important? Again, here's those terms again. Often the difference between a victim and survivor is simply situational awareness and commitment to action. Again, the sooner you're situationally aware, the sooner you can commit to action and increase your chances of surviving an active threat. Sometimes it can be funny. We're not getting volume. For some reason, the TV volume's not playing. I got speakers here. Mm-hmm.
So after Stanford gets really quiet. Nobody, so I'm on train. Nobody else is on my train. Now I lived in New York as an adult, going into bad neighborhoods enough, so I'm situationally aware. So the car is empty. Freaked me out.
It freaked me out too.
Yeah, and so I said to myself, as I would do, so what do I do? So I moved the car. I moved my car further where I hope to see someone closer to a conductor or something. But this kind of thing happens all the time. You know, you see, I also have been on Metro North. I saw a bag. You know, I've been in Israel enough to know, you know, so, but there's nobody now with short staffing everywhere. Who do you tell? So the bag was sitting there. The guy left. There was nobody there. So I moved to another car. You know what?
So we'll talk a little bit about this. What you're doing is part of the decision-making process. You're observing. You're orientating yourself. I'm by myself. And then you're making a decision. This is not safe for me. I'm going to move to a different car. How many people have their heads buried in their phones on the train, not paying attention? You know, you kind of grew up in New York, in Israel. You've experienced this. You have life experience that has made you situationally aware, more acutely aware than maybe the average person. And that what we're trying to do is kind of raise up everybody's level to that. And you're right. Sometimes you see that bag there and you can't find the conductor. Like, who do I tell? And you can always, like I said, even on the train, you can always call 911. I'm on the train. There's a bag here. You know, can you get the conductor down? You know, and trust me, you're not burdening anybody by calling 911. You know, they'll appreciate it. And if anybody's got questions, feel free to ask. But sometimes situation, you know, can be a little tragic too, or a lack thereof. So the Boston Marathon bombing. As you saw that video real quick, talking about baseline behaviors, everyone in the crowd is doing the same thing. they're watching the race, they're having a good time, everyone's dressed very similarly, except for the one thing that didn't fit in, and that was the bomber, who wasn't paying attention, wasn't with anybody, wasn't paying attention to anything, didn't care about the race. And actually, the Massachusetts State Police since then has started a unit, and all they do are go to these big events, or they even go to Patriot games, and they're looking for that. They're looking for the anomaly that doesn't fit in. They have a lot of training, and sometimes it's just a goofy person who doesn't want to, doesn't have the football jersey on at a sporting event, or just hanging by themselves. But they're watching for this, and they're looking for this, and they're looking for things that aren't the baseline norm. So awareness, it helps you recognize dangers, helps you plan, develop options as situations evolve. Just like we were talking about, I'm by myself on the train. Let me think about this. I'm going to move to the next train. Do a little car jump into the next train. Plans and options, faster reaction time. Faster reaction time. Again, here's what we talked about from the beginning. Faster reaction time improves chances of survival. All right, so it's a holistic mindset comprised of the following components: awareness levels, observations, orientations, decisions, action. Just like we talked about. I'm aware I'm by myself. First of all, my head's not buried in my phone, or I'm not daydreaming out the window. I'm looking around. I'm by myself on the train. So you're observing. You're orientating yourself like, probably not good. Decision, I'm going to move to a different train. And then you took action. You moved to a different train. So if you don't take anything else from this training tonight, remember this slide. This is actually my favorite slide in the whole training. It was developed by a former Marine, Colonel Cooper, who was also well known in the firearms industry. He developed the modern shooting techniques. But he developed this for the military, and we kind of co-opted it for this training. Tuned out, which is the white level. It's when you're sitting on your couch on a Sunday morning, chilling out, looking out the window on the train, not paying attention. That's what tuned out is. That's where we never want to be, especially here at shul or at a Jewish event. We want to be tuned in or paying attention, which is the next level, the yellow level. Think of paying attention as a nice leisurely walk. Something you can do all day long. Not get too tired, just kind of keep going at a very leisurely pace. Tuned in, it's more like a jog. You can do it for a little bit, you're going to get tired. And I'll admit, that's kind of where I'm at a lot of times, is that tuned in level. Like I said, it's healthy for a little bit, but then it becomes a little bit unhealthy. And there's times and places you need to be tuned in, and we'll show you some videos to kind of explain that. But really, this is where we want people to be. Red alert is a sprint. 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, that's all you can do it for. That's when the train's about to go off the tracks. That's when there's an emergency and you're committing to action, when you're red alert. Paralyzed, again, I'll show you a video of what paralyzed looks like. Just like tuned out, that's not where we ever want to be. We never want to be paralyzed, because when you're paralyzed, you can't commit to action. Deer in the headlights, tunnel vision. It's not where we want to be. And I'll admit, it's an interesting thing. At the end of my career, we started using body cams. Kind of wish we had them in the beginning of my career, because they're actually, believe it or not, a great training tool. I remember early in my career being paralyzed, having tunnel vision, not having experience, not knowing what to do. And then when we got later in my career, when we got the body cams, you watch these videos of your guys, especially the new guys, having the same kind of deer in the headlights look, and it's like, you shouldn't be doing that. So it's a great little training tool. So this is what not tuned out looks like. That's that white level. It's a person texting and driving. We've all seen it. We've all seen the cars in front of us weaving, not knowing what they're doing because they're texting or on the phone, and they drive right off the road. You got teenagers, you know what this looks like. This is where we want people to be. We want you to be like this at shul, at events, but also within your daily life is tuned in. Driving on a rainy night, kind of focus a little bit more. So tune in. This is that next level. This is that more intense level. This is kind of that level, like I said, I kind of work at more than I should. Think of bodyguards, professional bodyguards. Look where they're looking. Look where their eyes are. Their eyes are scanning the horizon. That's intense. These guys are professionals. This is trained. This is, most people can't focus or can't get that intense for that long. But that's what that looks like. This is Red Alert, and I love this video because my mom here is great. This is mom getting a rabid raccoon off her daughter, but watch her commitment, watch her situational awareness, watch how quickly she reacts, and watch how she commits to action. That's commitment to action right there. That's mom. She hears her daughter screaming. She doesn't hesitate. She's not thinking, oh, something's wrong with my daughter. No. She runs. She sees what's going on. She gets her daughter out of harm's way. She takes the bullet for her daughter, metaphorically, gets the raccoon out of the way. That's how you're supposed to react. Revolving the world around me. I was out jogging about 2 Sundays ago, just late morning, it's a nice day. It's in the neighborhood behind mine, and there's Mr. Bear on the grass, no more than probably me to the end of the sanctuary. And so I look over, and there's the bear, and we kind of wave to each other, and I had to commit to action, so I did the whole, you make your arms big, and then I got to that, let me run as fast as I can. And there was a couple of houses I could have ran to, but I was looking behind, and the bear wasn't really, he was a fat bear, fortunately, so he wasn't very interested in me. So he kept on walking, and I got out of there. But I was paying attention, though, watching for him. So this is tuned out. This is paralyzed. This is the video from Chabad in, I think, San Francisco. It might be a Passover Seder. But there are gentlemen having their Seder, and a man's going to walk in. Starts screaming, starts wailing, flinging his arms. Watch how they react or don't react to this. There's no sound to this. So there's a gentleman walking in. They're clearly not familiar with him. He's irate. So that's a gun in his hand. That's him racking the gun. So I'm not sure what this gentleman's going to do right here on the phone. That's him shooting the gun. Turned out there was blanks in that gun. But they didn't know that at the time. So what you just watched were these gentlemen sitting there. Not a single person did a single thing during that entire time. And the question I always like to ask, give me 1 second, Rich. The question I always like to ask is, are you willing to put your life in that man's hands? Which is what they did. They put their lives, they left their fate in that man's hands. And that's what we're trying to teach people to do. When you commit to action, is don't put your life in that man's hands. Rich? So here's the thing. I He got up to get on the phone because he wasn't paying attention and walked right to the threat. So so here's the thing. I can't tell you exactly what to do or what they should have done. I'm not there. I don't know what's out of camera range, okay? You're seeing this from one angle. I don't know what's out of camera range, all right? So I don't know where your exits are in this facility. Here's what I can tell you. I am not putting my life in that man's hands. Now, if I'm sitting here, my reaction may be very different than if I'm sitting by the door and I'm right next to that guy, okay? Where I'm situated and what the threat is probably going to dictate what I do. But I'm going to do something. You know, we talk about the hostage situation in Colleyville, Texas, at the synagogue. Okay? Rabbi Charlie at that synagogue was I don't think he's more than $140 dripping wet. He's a very small man. See these chairs right here? I've seen the chair he threw. He picked up a chair, which looked very similar to these chairs because it was a sanctuary chair, and he threw it at the hostage taker at the right moment. He committed to action. I can't tell you what to do. I can tell you he had the training, and when the time came, he committed to action, and he did the right thing, and he saved all four of them. Because the whole joke of that was when they got asked, what did you do when the SWAT team rescued you? And Rabbi Charlie laughs and goes, I rescued myself. What are you talking about? So like I said, I can't tell you exactly what to do. I can tell you, your reaction is going to be different based on your knowledge, your training, your experience, and really where you're sitting there, where the exits are. I'm just not going to sit there, all right? If you can get up and run out, I can tell you this, I'm not going to get on my phone and walk to the guy, okay? If you could, and a lot of this is talked about in the active threat training, where what do you do? This is more the situational awareness training, so I don't want to kind of front it too much. But there's a lot of options that you do have. And the option you don't want to take is just to sit there and leave your fate in that man's hands, which is what they did. Sometimes you're lucky and not good, and they were lucky. They weren't good. They were lucky. He didn't have real ammo. He didn't know how to use. He barely knew how to use the gun. He was there trying to play with it for a while. They got lucky. They weren't good. We're trying to get people to be good.
Andrew, a couple of years ago, there was simulation. One of the active shooter 2-day things in Holyoke, South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
The last piece of that was active shooter simulation. So we're upstairs in that tiny synagogue, no room to go up the floor. And so the policeman who is the big rubber AR, whatever, he comes running in the back. It's a glass door for anybody who's been there. And who jumps up? And they said, jump, do whatever, throw books. This 90-plus-year-old World War II vet jumps on top of him and knocks the cop, big guy, knocks him down. The cop was hysterical. He couldn't believe it.
Well, I always get back to. So I appreciate your story. It's a great point, and the person I point to in a real life scenario, not because that's a good one. And I get this a lot in these trainings because a lot of people are like, I'm elderly or I'm not good at I go back to Tree of Life and 90-year-old Joe Charney. Joe Charney was a 90-year-old congregant. And if you see, we picture him in the other training, in the active threat training. He was frail. He was 90. He was frail. He wasn't going to die that day. He made a commitment to action. And him and a few others, Miss Glickman, who was leading the service that day, ran to an empty office that had clothing donations, trash bags of clothing donations piled up. And they hid under the clothing donations. And Joe Charney at some point went, if I'm going to die. It's not going to be under a bag of clothing donations. So he got up, and they actually ran out together and got saved. But they committed to action. Miss Glickman tells a great story, very matter-of-fact story about surviving. She actually wrote a book called Pockets, and the reason why she calls it Pockets is because she was wearing slacks that day, didn't have any pockets, and forgot her cell phone. So she's trying to make phone calls as she's, and she's like looking around. So she actually wrote a book on it. Tells a really good story, But I would like to say, just like your 90-year-old World War II veteran, Joe Charney survived that day to teach everybody else, if I can do it, you can do it too. I'm not a big fan of the active threat drills. I think they're good and they're interesting. But the one thing is I like to tell people, and we'll talk about this in the training, is everyone has a vision of what the bad day is going to look like, and I try to tell people, get that vision out of your mind because you don't know what it's going to look like. You had a heavy security at a Washington function 3 weeks ago. No one pictured that scenario. No one pictured some madman in Colorado with gasoline throwing at old people. Like, no one pictured these scenarios. So, if anything, we talk about this a lot, about threats from the left, threats from the right. I'm actually more concerned about, like, classroom lockdowns and we talked about it, across the street, or all these synagogues that have daycares and parental custody issues and disgruntled congregants. So threats can come from a lot of different places. So these are our levels again. And like I said, this is where we want people to be, this yellow level. All right, obstacles to awareness: technology, mood, stress, health, perceptions, bias, training, news, culture. I mean, if anyone has kids, you know this. Their heads are buried in their phones. My daughter gets irritated with me because I tell her constantly, put your head on a swivel, especially when she's driving, put your head on a swivel, scan for threats, and she gets annoyed with me. It's like, stop it, but she does it. So this is what we're talking about I want to have you watch this video. I want to talk about it. This is kind of a big one, and especially in the Jewish community. Like I said, I think I've hit every synagogue, Western Mass, the Berkshires, the camps, the schools. So I've kind of gotten out there. And you see this a lot where you have some synagogues really, really, really hyper-focused on threats from the right. I mean the political right. You got some synagogues really, really hyper-focused on threats from the left. And I'm just like, you got to stop. You got to stop doing this. And, you hyper-focus on orange shirts, and then you completely miss the guy dropping the bag in the middle of the. So we really try to get that out there. Like I said, it scares me when I go to any synagogue that has a daycare center. That just scares me because there's so many threats that can come from that. So I really we try to emphasize, Don't hyper-focus on just one type of threat. All right. So the OODA loop, invented by a fighter pilot in World War II. And it's kind of the decision-making process of observing, orientating, deciding, and acting. And we already talked about this with your train ride tonight, as far as you observed you're by yourself, you orientated yourself, you made a decision, and you acted upon it. It's the same thing when you're driving. You driving behind a car that's too slow, you make the lane, you look, you can see you can make the lane change successfully, you make the lane change, you get back over, you do the process again. It's a circular process. It's always evolving, always moving forward. Kind of like the game Frogger. Action beats reaction. So observations, how do we observe? And again, I think the next iteration of this training is going to be a lot more about virtual observations. But here we're still talking about the physical observations. How do you become, so being situationally aware, being really good at situational awareness, is being able to observe people, places, events. We observe people, gender, race, height, weight, hair, shirts, pants, shoes, distinguishing features, weapons. In law enforcement, they train you head down. You go from head down. It's formerly black hair, kind of graying hair, glasses, jacket, blue shirt, blue pants. That's how you observe people. How you kind of remember what people look like. If I can get any closer. Places. Lit versus unlit, sidewalk versus road, rural versus open, open confined, crowded or isolated, cardinal directions, landmarks, street signs. This is always a big one for me. I remember I was in New York in the late 1990s. I was new. I didn't know anything about the city, or I didn't know the city well. I'm working with a bunch of NYPD cops who are salty, crusty, and they know the city like the back of their hands. And we're out in Queens. We're out in Queens a lot. I didn't know where I was going, how to get there. I had my old Hagstrom Street Finder map. It was, this is pre-GPS days, so the 5-borough map, it was spotless in 1998, and by 2008, it was just falling apart. Thank God it came out GPS. But the cop said to me one day, I don't know how to get there, or I didn't know the direction. And they're like, you see that big building over there? I'm like, yeah, it's the Empire State Building. If you can see the Empire State Building, you're facing west. You can figure out the other 3 directions from there, but it's like, if you need to orientate yourself, look for the Empire State Building, you're facing west, figure the rest out. I'm like, okay, kind of works. But street signs at 1160 Dickinson, right? Oh no, Federation's 1160 Dickinson, 970 Dickinson, I'm thinking. 979. There, okay. Always try to remember where you're at. Always try to remember addresses. Street signs, landmarks. When you gotta call the police. You got 2 synagogues right across the street from each other. You got B'nai Torah right down the street. You got the school not too far off. So if you say I'm at the synagogue, I'm at the big synagogue in Springfield, you got multiple choices around here. So know where you're at. Know your locations. Vehicles. Again, that's another big one for me. Make, model, newer, older, number of doors, license plates, distinguished features, number of heads you see in the car. Like I said, I spent a lot of time following people around in cars. So you got pretty good at being able to distinguish, there's a million Nissan Rogues out there, a million Toyota RAV4s out there. And you got pretty good at distinguishing little things on cars to remember them. The Hanukkah stabbing in Muncie, New York in 2019. Man from New York City, he was off his meds that day. He decided he wanted to kill some Jews. Drove up to Muncie, went to a synagogue, couldn't get into the synagogue, went to the rabbi's house next door, stabbed the rabbi, killed the rabbi. It was having a Hanukkah party. One of the people at the party got the make and model of the car, and they got 5 out of the 6 numbers on the license plate. Because he got 5 out of 6 numbers, they were able to put a lookout for the car. Car, make, model, 5 out of 6 numbers, hits on a license plate reader in New York City, and 2 hours later, he's in custody. All because one person was a good witness, good observations, got the information for the police. Suspicious behavior, taking unusual pictures, tampering with doors and lights, standing at a bus stop, loitering, watching people, leaving packages, driving slowly. I get this all day long on my work phone. I get all the threats that come into the SCN duty desk. They send it out to us in an email. I probably get 20 a day minimum. A lot of them are synagogue calls up, whether it's to me or whether they report directly to our duty desk. We got a car in our parking lot. Here's the car tag. Or we got a visitor to our front door. We get these all kinds of phone calls. You wouldn't believe it. Emails to synagogues. We get these all day long. Synagogues being observant and watching the activity in their parking lots, in their areas, calling in because they know this is unusual behavior. Fortunately, here you're really lucky because the cops like to hang out here, like to hang out in Sinai. It's a great thing. All right, can you spot the suspicious behavior here? Suspicious. Anybody, somebody. Did he do anything? All right, you're good. You're not bad. Watch that trash can there. And it's a little unfair because it's a small screen too. So he leaves a backpack there. It's hard. What this shows, it's hard. You've got distractions. You've got these things that are distracting you, and it's really hard to pick up on that one little thing. But that was great. I mean, it might be a manager in the front row, but that's okay. Like I said, it's a little tough on this screen. All right. I'm going to ask you a question about this video. Who had the red light? Be a good witness. Be observant. You know who had the red light? It was it's a car coming past us. What can you tell me about that car that you saw? Flat tire. How many flat tires? All right. How many doors? What color was the car? Anything else distinguishing? What was in the trunk? Okay. How many occupants of the vehicle? Okay. Anything else? Yeah. 2 flat tires. Windows are out. 2-door car. And I won't ask you because it's too small on the screen. It's a Chevrolet. Usually on a bigger screen you can see it. To orientate is to take what you are seeing, put it into context of your situation or environment, then ask yourself, is this normal or suspicious? Remember, so I started from the beginning, believe behavior. It really is, if you think it's gunfire, it really is gunfire. Trust yourself. But context does matter. Again, this is what makes this hard. Context matters. You thought it was going to be a skinhead attacking what looks like an observant Jewish person. He's actually saving himself. Again, none of this is easy. And that's why we train. Examples: nervous, fidgety, sweating, quick glances, abruptly changing behavior, inappropriate dress, unusual mental or physical behavior, criminal activity. Dress was always a big one for me because I used to deal with people, and no matter what the weather was, it was like they had 18 layers of clothing on. It's because it's easier to hide things in 18 layers of clothing than 2 layers of clothing. But it is true. You will see, if you're you will see that carotid you will see that with nervous people. Sure. What you got? Did you get me too? All right. What are my options when you've observed these things? You can report. You can call 911 if it's an emergency. Be a good witness. What Rich just did is the easiest thing to do. It's this day and age. If you see something, they said you got a lot of the synagogues now. You got some cameras. You got cameras here at Bethel. Whether you have the video camera saved, whether you take a picture of your phone, it's the easiest way to be a good witness. You can always call me if it's something synagogue related. It's not an emergency. Feel free to call me. Give me an email. Clarify. Someone appears to be following you while walking at night. You decide to cross the street. The person continues walking on the opposite side. You clarify their intentions. If you've been on the train car with somebody else and you're by yourself, maybe you get up, if that person follows you, then you know their intentions. If the person stays there, you know you're fine. Avoid. This is a big one lately. You go to the department store, there's a protest, large gathering, you decide to leave, go somewhere else. I actually had someone, about 2 weeks ago, I did the same training at Hebra in the Great Barrington, and they're like, I'm going to this King's rally in 2 weeks. What am I, any suggestion? I would say, don't go. But I said, if you have to go, stay on the fringes. And we'll talk about more, but stay on the fringes. Don't put yourself in the middle of the crowd. Like I said, that's why I kind of usually just stay at home and sit on my back deck and enjoy the day, because I don't want to go out to crowds, but that's just me. Defense. Again, it's the next training. We run, we hide. Your life's in danger. It's time to leave. It's time to commit to action. Get out of there. If you have to fight, and again, this isn't Chuck Norris training. This isn't Kung Fu. This isn't, we don't train any of that. This is more of a mental training. But we do teach people, if you're going to fight, you fight for your life. You fight dirty, you commit to action. You do what Rabbi Charlie did. You pick up a chair, you throw it, and you tell everybody to run, which is what he did. That's how you commit to action. Do something. Your action will cause a reaction. Continue the OODA loop. Doing this faster than the threat will put you at an advantage. Action is faster than reaction. So this is a video from Brooklyn. It's a Hasidic man about to get robbed. Just kind of watch it. His head's buried in his phone. not paying attention, doesn't see the 4 people on the other side of the street. Yes. That's what we call a victim. Head buried in his phone, walking on a dark street in Brooklyn at night by himself, not paying attention. At any point, if he took his head out of his phone and looked up and saw the 4 people on the other side of the street, you could have made decisions. Maybe I'll turn around and go to a different street. Maybe I'll turn around and go to a different street and call 911 or call somebody just to have them, know what's going on. He chose to be a victim. He didn't pay attention. He got robbed. And this wasn't an anti-Semitic attack. This was just a robbery crew who saw an easy target. This is where we don't want you to be. This is the 180 of the last video. This video is where we want you to be. So watch this video and tell me who's situationally aware here. But the dog's not the right answer.